Secondaries, and it's a beautiful day for a drive up into the canyons. You do have clear road conditions in both Big and Little Cottonwood. The Zero Res holiday sale is on now, just $25 per room for carpet cleaning. Schedule Monday or Tuesday and clean before the new year. Schedule today online at zerores.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Mostly cloudy this afternoon with a high of 40 degrees. Tonight's low 30, tomorrow 42, and the haze building in even stronger. Right now, you've got mostly cloudy skies and 36 degrees. I'm Becky Bruce, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Ukrainian President Zelensky is in our nation's capital today. In fact, just moments ago, he was at the White House getting ready to go into a meeting with President Joe Biden. Earlier today, he met with top congressional leaders in an attempt to secure more aid for Ukraine's war effort. But beyond the headlines, we want to take a look at what are the fake fights and false choices we should be wary of as Republicans and Democrats bicker over funding a country that's fighting one of our greatest adversaries. So let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
So it's time to think again about everything going on in our nation's capital today, from border security to the battle in Ukraine. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to take a look at some of those fake fights and false choices being served up by both sides of the political aisle when it comes to funding Ukraine. We'll look deeply at the immigration policy and how that is suddenly becoming part of a broader international debate. And then coming up at 2:15 in the program, President Biden and President Zelensky will be ending their meeting and are expected to make joint statements as well as take some questions from the press. So we'll take that live as it goes around 2:15 this afternoon. So stay with us for the entire show today. For the next 30 minutes, let's get past the headlines and into what's going on in our nation's capital. After a meeting with President Zelensky this morning, this was important, met with all the senators, left and right. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer spoke on the Senate floor about the urgency of passing this aid package, $61 billion additional dollars to Ukraine.
President Zelensky's message was direct. Ukraine will win the war against Russia if more aid is approved. President Zelensky urged that we need to pass this aid quickly, because if we don't pass it quickly, it'll send a signal to the whole world that we are abandoning Ukraine and could start a snowball cascading to Ukraine's detriment and to our detriment. If Ukraine falls, it will be a historic and colossal tragedy.
Those are important words from Senator Chuck Schumer, and I think you got it right. I think he came out of the meeting with President Zelensky, and I think that was very clarifying in terms of what is at stake as the battle rages on inside of Ukraine, as Vladimir Putin continues to try to press forward. It's really at a stalemate and a bit of a slow slog right now. But the question becomes, do we just continue to let them rock along just a little bit? Because there's no way that Ukraine survives that kind of fight. Putin will win that battle. Time is Putin's friend. He knows that. He knows that the focus and the energy in America will wane, and that is his best chance at victory. Now, really interesting, we caught this just as we were getting ready to come on and begin the show. Senator Patty Murray, Democrat from Washington, told reporters, again, just moments ago, that the Senate is sending a bad message to our allies and to our adversaries abroad.
Now is the time to work together. It sends a dangerous message when one half of the Senate is focused on pitting allies in crises against each other as political bargaining chips. We've talked about this at length. We simply cannot afford further delays that tell our adversaries they can just wait us out. We cannot afford half steps that tell our allies we will only stand by some of them, some of the time.
That's an important message, and I think it's ironic coming from the Democratic side of the aisle. They've been dragging their feet on a host of other issues, and so now it's interesting that they're finding their steely spine when it comes to Ukraine. I think it's the right thing, and I think the message from Senator Murray, I think, is important. It is a dangerous message when a part of the Senate is focused on pitting allies and crises against each other. And you hear me say that a lot on this program, fake fights and false choices. And that's clearly where we are. This has become something about border security and funding for Ukraine. We can do both. We should do both. We need to do both. And if we don't do both, the message that it sends to our allies and to our enemies around the world is significant. Now, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson also met with President Zelensky today, and afterwards he held a brief press conference emphasizing the position of the House Republicans on the issue.
I have asked the White House since the day that I was handed the gavel as Speaker for clarity. We need a clear articulation of the strategy to allow Ukraine to win. And thus far, their responses have been insufficient. They have not provided us the clarity and the detail that we have requested over and over. I have also made very clear from day one that our first condition on any national security supplemental spending package is about our own national security first. The border is an absolute catastrophe, and this is because of the policies of this White House and this administration. And I implore them to do their job because the time is urgent, and we do want to do the right thing here.
So that was the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, just calling on the White House for clarity on the strategy as it comes to Ukraine, and then also looking at our border security on the southern border here in the United States. I think that's an important conversation point. And I think the thing that's most interesting about that is calling on the White House to get more involved. It's not very often that you have Republicans calling on a Democratic president to become more involved in negotiations to pass some spending bills. In fact, I want to jump to Mitch McConnell, Senate Minority Leader, Republican. He told reporters this afternoon that he thinks President Biden needs to be more directly involved in actually closing the deal.
What I have said to him is the only way we'll get an agreement is for you to be involved. Don't just punt the ball up to Senate Democrats. They may never get there. And so it's been difficult to get the kind of support out of the administration itself. Look, we all know he's the only one that can sign a bill into law. Without him, there is no deal.
So that was Senate Minority Leader, Republican Mitch McConnell. So, again, that's way beyond the headline. It's the think again moment. You have the two Republican leaders calling on the Democratic President Joe Biden to get more involved in the negotiation with Republicans and Democrats on getting a deal on funding some border security along with funding for Ukraine. That's significant. You don't see that a whole lot. That's kind of the think again moment here. And the question is, will the president lean in or will he leave it to Democrats in the House and the Senate? And I actually think Senator Schumer is right. If the president doesn't weigh in and lays back, leads from behind, I don't think Senator Schumer gets anything across the line before the holidays, to the detriment of the southern border, to the detriment of Ukraine, and for freedom around the world. Now, for his part, President Zelensky yesterday spoke to military and defense officials at the National Defense College. Interesting place for him to go. His speech highlighted the cause of freedom against Putin's stranglehold of autocracy.
Freedom always requires unity, and I'm confident that freedom can be stronger than any of its enemies, and I believe we can be just as effective in defending freedom now as the free world was in 1989. And I'm as confident today as I was on February 24th when I told world leaders Ukraine will fight, Ukraine will stand. And I'm confident that freedom must always prevail when challenged.
That was President Zelensky making the cause that freedom always requires unity. Freedom can be stronger than its enemies. So beyond the headlines of just President Zelensky coming to the United States, meeting with key leaders in the White House as well as in Congress, not just hat in hand asking for a handout. He's been making the case of how they're getting stronger, they're becoming more independent, less dependent on aid, their economy is growing, and they need support to actually not just hold their ground, but to actually win the war against Vladimir Putin. So the question, and where we're going to go next in this conversation as we stay with the conversation just a little bit longer, is how does border security and immigration suddenly get into the middle of what the United States does in terms of national defense for an ally and for freedom in Ukraine? We'll talk about that coming up next. Stick around.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Think about all the ways you use your phone. But are you getting KSL's breaking news updates?
We've got a storm to start the day.
Israel Defense Forces are adamant that they're just following protocol.
The White House is getting worried about Russia's growing relationship with Iran.
The vacancy left in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles has been filled.
Get alerts, links to important story articles, and updates on severe weather and traffic. Text the word news to 57500. That's the word news to 57500. And stay connected to KSL News Radio.
Hi, this is Doug Wright. Over the years, I've talked a lot about hard water takes years off the life of water heaters and other appliances in your home. Leaves scum on the shower walls, and you almost need a jackhammer to remove that. I've talked about how Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Connecticut dealer, their water softeners are maintenance-free. You just don't need adjustment, and they do the job with 2/3 less salt than other softeners. But today, I want to talk about the exhilarating feeling of stepping into a hot bath or shower and feeling that pure, soft water cascade over your skin. It feels like every pore in your body wants to stand up and start singing. And afterward, there are no itchy hard water deposits sticking all over you. You really should look into a soft water system from Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Connecticut dealer. You can learn more about Connecticut by giving them a call at 801-576-8600 or log on to Softwater Utah. Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Connecticut dealer. Then sit back and enjoy your shower even more.
Imagine how inconvenient your life would be without power. No lights, no refrigeration, no heating or cooling, and no electronics. But with a Generac home standby generator, you'll have the power when you need it most. Generac generators automatically provide backup after sensing a power outage, so your life goes on uninterrupted. Schedule a free quote today with Genco Generators, your premier Generac service dealer in Utah. Call 801-295-0872 or online at gencogenerators.net.
How's the water where you live? Depending on where you live in Utah, the water coming out of your tap might be really hard and not taste very good. It might be leaving spots on your glasses and shower and leaving your skin dry.
We want you to know our friends at Superior Water and Air have solutions for your home and your business, by the way. They have the best, most efficient water softeners in Utah, but not only that, they also have water purifiers that will give your family crystal clear drinking water.
And if you're still using those big unsanitary water bottles in your office, let Superior hook you up to a more convenient, trusted water system.
When you think of Superior Water and Air, think of solutions for everything in your home, from plumbing to water heaters to furnaces and air conditioning, and of course those great home standby generators.
To keeping the air in your home as healthy as possible, especially during these inversions. I had Superior install 2 things in my home that have helped us so much. We have an air purifier and a humidifier hooked right up to our furnace.
Call Superior today, 974-9090, or go to superiorwaterandair.com.
Attention Wasatch Front businesses and property managers. Don't wait for bad weather to schedule professional snow service with GoPave Utah. Your complete parking lot safety starts at gopavutah.com.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
A clue.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent.
Aha.
So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle. Tide cleans better than the leading competitive free detergent, and it doesn't leave behind irritating residues.
Plus, Tide Free and Gentle has no dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on her skin.
Case closed.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Free and Gentle.
Join KSL for a special Christmas movie show December 21st from 9 to noon at the Salt Lake NPS Store, 1600 Empire Road, npsstore.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Becky Bruce. First, just days after the current Attorney General says he won't run for re-election, the first official candidate has dropped his name in the hat. It's Derek Brown, his campaign headed up by former Governor Gary Herbert. Second, prescription opioids may be down, but the DEA says they're still seeing an increase in fentanyl, a street opioid across Utah. And third, cheaper gas prices helped reduce inflation on some consumer goods in the latest government report. Right now, it's 36 degrees and mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
We're staying with the conversation, of course, with Ukrainian President Zelensky in Washington, D.C. today. Pressure is mounting on Congress to pass a deal that would aid Ukraine. And then, of course, we have this interesting connection between Ukraine aid and border security immigration policy. And while both sides love to point fingers at the other for the current impasse, we should remember that President Biden is the one who lumped border security into this broader aid package in the first place. But beyond that, we have to get to who's really digging in and why. And what is it about the immigration policy changes that we actually need to have on the table? There's a lot of them. Will they actually make the border more secure? Are these just fake fights and more false choices? Really pleased to have back on the show David Beer, the Associate Director of Immigration Studies at the Cato Institute. David, this is one of those that is always so interesting. Great content and great insight in terms of what's going on in terms of some of the asylum laws, which is one piece of this very complicated, very complex issue in terms of immigration and border security. So I want to start there and then kind of work our way through some of the other issues that are all getting lumped together into one big muddled mess. So help us keep all of these in their proper lane. Let's start with asylum and some of the things that are being put on the table in terms of some of those issues.
Yeah, right. So the most important thing to understand, and it's lost on members of Congress and almost everyone in the public because the reporting on this is so poor, but the main issue has nothing to do with asylum. That you got to just put that whole idea that people are being released because they are requesting asylum at the border. The reality is they are being released at the border because there are not enough planes, there are not enough beds, there are not enough places to put all the people who cross the border and then send them back to their home country. So right now, under the Biden administration, they have an asylum rule that says you will be assumed to be ineligible for asylum if you cross the border illegally. And they have only been able to apply that rule to about 10% of all the people who've crossed the border since they enacted it in May. And that's because there's not enough asylum officers to interview them. There's not enough places to hold all these people. And so eventually the places fill up and they release people. And so we have a lot of this focus on asylum and how to tweak this or that. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you can't actually get to whether or not this person is going to be removed and put them on a plane and remove them if they're ineligible. And so I feel like there's a lot of focus on this issue of asylum, and I think it's a little bit misplaced. What they're talking about in terms of reforming asylum is everything from a near complete asylum ban, that no one would be eligible for asylum if they came through Mexico to the U.S.-Mexico border, to tweaking the initial standard when they're being interviewed. But these tweaks are just, you're tweaking a 10% of the issue. You're not really dealing with the big picture, which is ultimately a resource issue. And so I'm not, I don't know to what extent this plays into the negotiations, but the reality at the border is much different than the sort of mainline talking point, which is we just need to get rid of asylum, or we just need to limit it in some way.
Yeah, no question. And this is why we have you on the show, because we have to get past these headlines that are often distractions or deceiving or misinformation, disinformation, whatever category you want to lump them into. Your piece in The Hill was fantastic in terms of this idea that we always talk about it in context of elephants don't bite, but fleas do, and just tweaking at the 10% problem is really not going to do anything. And so as you look at this more broadly, beyond just the asylum component, what else is it that we're really looking at, and where are we just chasing shiny objects and fake fights and false choices and avoiding actually having the real conversation that I think could actually solve the problem?
Yeah, so I think one area where there is a lot of division in the Senate over how to proceed, and of course the House has already passed their position on the issue, is parole. And this is a discretionary authority that Congress has provided to the president to decide if he wants to let someone in legally to the country, or if someone has crossed illegally, whether to release them from detention on this sort of quasi-legal status that they would receive, and then they would have the right to work in the United States. And the House basically ends the ability for the president to grant people this legal status, whether in the United States or abroad. And I think there's a debate in the Senate about how to proceed on this, because the way that I look at it, if you let's have legal channels for people to enter the country legally from abroad, then they're less likely to come illegally and show up at the border and cause problems down there. And the Senate is sort of like, well, can we bifurcate this and say it's okay to let people in legally from abroad, but we want to deal with letting people out of custody at the border and after they've crossed illegally. And so that's the debate going on that issue, which I think is an important one, and will ultimately determine what happens going forward. If they get rid of the authority to let people in legally, then you will see a lot more people come to the border to enter illegally.
Yeah, and I think that is the ultimate. And I love the way you concluded your piece in The Hill, thehill.com, that politicians create a false choice between a secure and a welcoming border. Americans deserve and can have both. We give a big amen to that. That is right on point. And David, we appreciate you joining us today. David is the Associate Director of Immigration Studies at the Cato Institute. It's an important piece. You should check it out at thehill.com today because it is part of a crucial conversation. I think the country's far closer together than often the political parties want us to believe when it comes to border security and immigration. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course. Thanks.
All right. Again, that's David Bier from the Cato Institute. And if you're just joining us, we've spent the last half hour talking about all of the things going on surrounding President Zelensky's trip to the United States. Of course, he's here to secure additional aid and funding for Ukraine in their battle against Russia and Vladimir Putin. And this is being tied and connected because the president put them together. The president put border security and aid to Ukraine and Israel, by the way, all into one package that he proposed. So the president put that thing together. The question, though, is will anyone have the courage to pull it apart? Will anyone have the courage? Democrat or Republican? Somebody, show me the courage to split that apart, deal with it, and actually have a vote before you leave town. Because that would be what is best for freedom around the world, to our allies, the message it will send to our enemies, and most importantly, what it will do to actually secure our southern border as well. This is a false choice. This is not either or. This is not polar opposite. These are compatible principles, compatible policies that are in the best interest of the country. And it's time we stop having the fake fight and the false choice, and we get to the better part of the solution. The question will be, who will lead? I think President Biden needs to lean in. And even a lot of Republicans are now saying, Mr. President, you need to lean in for both Democrats and Republicans. That's a rare call. And I think the president should take him up on it. And he should get in the room where it's happening, and they should have a serious conversation to change the game. All right, that wraps it up. We're going to step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. But don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to talk with Utah Congressman John Curtis, who just got back from the Climate Summit in Dubai. We'll talk about his conversations there and why they matter at an international conference to us right here in the state of Utah. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Testing. The amount of fentanyl in Utah.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
131 at KSL News Radio. I'm Becky Bruce. KSL's top local story this hour. Derek Brown, former chair of the GOP in Utah, is now running for Attorney General. KSL News Radio's Amy Kobe reports.
Brown says the state needs someone who will continue to push back against the federal government when it oversteps its bounds. Former Governor Gary Herbert has led Brown's exploratory committee for the past few weeks and says it's been going well. Herbert will now lead the campaign. This comes just a few days after current AG Sean Reyes announced he was not running for re-election.
Brown is joining the Inside Sources show with Boyd Matheson coming up at 1:50. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Local officials say Ukraine has come under heavy attack from the air and from cyberspace. And that's as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived on Capitol Hill to press Congress for additional military help and funding. Inflation is slowing, according to the latest government numbers. Lower energy prices helping reduce the cost of some goods. But Zions Bank senior economist Robert Spindlove says people are still feeling the strain at the grocery store.
Consumers are grumpy, and they're grumpy because the rate of change is slowing, but the prices haven't gone back to where they were before.
Spindlove says the Fed will decide if they'll make any changes to interest rates tomorrow. Your money at this moment, the Dow up 175 points. Coming up, we'll tell you where the trouble spots are. KSL traffic is next. KSL News Time 1:32.
We have enough people running around Broadcast House at 4 in the morning to field a football team.
Producers, reporters, the traffic team, and us.
This is Tim and Amanda.
Join us each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Well, people can tell you that you're special, but Hercules Credit Union, they actually put those words into real live action. I know it's a radical thing in the world today, but Hercules does it and does it right. For a limited time, you can qualify for a free Premier checking account. All you have to do is open up a regular account, and Hercules will upgrade you to a Premier checking account status free of any kind of monthly fees. You also get all the benefits of Premier checking status. You'll have identity theft protection, travel benefits, all kinds of perks, cellular care coverage, and much more. Again, for a limited time, you can qualify for a free Premier checking account at Hercules Credit Union. You can find their locations in Taylorsville, Harriman, Riverton, and Salt Lake City. Or, as always, with our friends at Hercules Credit Union, you can find them online at HerculesCU.com. That's HerculesCU.com.
Have you Googled yourself lately? Are there negative posts from an ex-employee or from a former client? Maybe an outdated news article or sensitive personal information about your family? Search engines don't always get it right. For right or wrong, it's your reputation on the line. That's where Reputation Defender by Norton comes in. One of the most trusted names in online reputation repair, Reputation Defender has been fixing people's search results for over 15 years. Their cutting-edge approaches help you to wipe away unwanted information in your search results. They also promote the good stuff so that it rises to the top, helping you put your best foot forward. Your good name is too valuable to leave to the whims of a Google algorithm. Take control with Reputation Defender. You can start by getting your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com or call 800-401-6681 to speak to an expert. That's 800-401-6681.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
Delay-free drive on the Valley freeways, but we do have one accident northbound I-215's east belt, about 3300 south, out of traffic on the shoulder. Join the Utah Symphony for the greatest classical hits from the 1700s to today. Tickets start at $21. Get yours today at utahsymphony.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
We're headed up to 40 degrees this afternoon with cloudy skies. Tonight's low 30, then hazy and 42 tomorrow. Right now it's mostly cloudy, 37 degrees. I'm Becky Bruce, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
It is always a pleasure to have joining us on the program Representative John Curtis, representing Utah's 3rd Congressional District. And Congressman, welcome back to the show. And you have been busy and traveled a few miles on an agenda that is surprising to some people and becoming less surprising, importantly, to others. Tell us where you've been and why.
Yes, and on that note, let me just say, I think when people realize what I did, they'll see the strong tie to Utah and why it's important for Utah. But I hopped on a plane Friday, flew over to Dubai, spent my weekend in Dubai, and hopped on a plane and came back to be back here for work Monday morning. So it was about 48 hours on the ground, and Dubai was the international, I will call it, climate summit. It's not the official name, but it was where the world comes together to talk about energy policy.
And give us some context there in terms of that. This is one of those annual gatherings. I think it's one that's becoming increasingly important because it's not just about the extreme of what climate change is or isn't. To me, it seems like we're really getting to a better conversation about stewardship and about the future.
We are, and it's also what people need to realize why it's important to be there. It's where decisions are made that impact Utah's pocketbook in a significant way. And if those decisions are made on bad information or information that's not helpful for Utah, that has serious side effects. And I think we've seen the price of gas as one of those examples.
Yeah, no question about that. And having a seat at the table is so crucial for all of those conversations. And as you said, those decisions that are being made. Some people have said, okay, this is a little unique to have a Republican contingency over there at this kind of summit. But should we really be surprised at that?
Well, I think we've been missing in the past, and this is my 3rd year I've gone, and every year I get a little deeper and deeper into the ability to influence it. And let me just tell you as an example, I found myself on panels talking about one of Utah's most important issues, permitting reform, on a panel with 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat. And that's really exciting for me because I've always been the one Republican with 3 Democrats kind of fighting for our principles. But to be at this conference and realize, look, there are more Republicans here than Democrats, and we're influencing major policy like permitting reform. Nothing is more important to the energy sector in Utah right now than permitting reform. And that was a fun moment for me.
Yeah, that's great. We always talk about the idea of exporting Utah to the rest of the country and to the rest of the world.
Exactly.
This is a real opportunity to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And it was fun to be part of it. And it was fun to see, like in the 3 years I've been going, actually a move in a pretty substantially important direction for Utah. 3 years ago, nobody was willing to talk about nuclear. And now nuclear is well accepted and understood that it has to be part of the future. And we're starting to have that same conversation about fossil fuels where, fossil fuels have been such taboo. And there were really thoughtful conversations this year about the role of fossil fuels and fossil fuels actually being part of the answer instead of the problem.
Yeah, that was one of the things that just watching it from very far away was I was just very intrigued that the conversation really went to, as you said, just being this awful, horrible thing to being part of a long-term solution or a path to a long-term solution. And that's a real game changer.
It is, and it's important for Utah. Look, the energy that comes from Utah is actually part of the solution. It's not the problem.
So important. We often talk about in these kinds of gatherings, even when you're only on the ground for about the same amount of time you were in the air going back and forth. But we talk about that bumpability factor and the hallway conversations that take place. Give us a sense of what that was like this year.
Well, it was very interesting. I found myself in conversations with, for instance, a parliament member from Germany who had just signed a letter banning any increased liquefied natural gas coming from the United States. And boy, my head was about to explode as she explained how dependent they were on Russia for natural gas and how they were shifting to U.S. natural gas and how she wanted to ban a further expansion of U.S. natural gas. And I thought, like, how can she not see what I see? And so that was one of the conversations that you're alluding to. And there were a lot of fun conversations for me. And also, I love challenging a lot of people who have a traditional view of climate and getting them to think about this in a different way. And what's interesting at the end of the day, you're really surprised how much we actually have in common with many of our Democratic colleagues. But how we approach it is just very differently.
Yeah, and we love those think again moments where we can have that surprise or aha or wow, I've never looked at it that way, or wow, we actually agree on a whole bunch of this stuff. That's always a great piece of the puzzle. And so give us some of the takeaways. What's the therefore what coming out of this conference? And again, what does it mean both for the United States and then, as you've been alluding to, what does it mean for us right here at home?
Well, they've had some trouble tying a bow around this conference, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have to talk more about worldwide emissions, not just individual country emissions, and that China is a bad actor in this. And, United States and all of the industrial countries in the world could cut their emissions to zero. And in the year 2050, we would have reduced greenhouse gas emissions by a whopping 12%. And so that's one of the takeaways is this has to be an international effort, and it doesn't do any good for us to sacrifice everything in the U.S. and China to increase their production. You can imagine how they feel in Emery County when we demonize a coal plant and then we turn a blind eye to China opening a coal plant once or twice a week, every week. And so that's one of the takeaways is it's got to be a much broader conversation. The second takeaway is they're starting to change the way they talk about this from reducing fossil fuels to reducing emissions. And that's this clear signal that, wait a minute, fossil fuels are going to be with us in 2050. Let's talk about reducing emissions and not trying to eliminate a source of energy.
Oh, so important. And then finally, Congressman, before I let you get back to a very busy day in our nation's capital today, give us one last thing that you wish people were thinking about or thinking differently about, especially as it relates to climate and energy.
Yeah, I think from a Utah perspective, I know the word climate is just hard on people, but I think we, I think we need to lean into it and realize that we don't need to be afraid of the answers. That if you really understand the science, that this favors Utah and favors our energy sector, and that by leaning into it, we make sure that we don't make bad decisions like they did in Germany or in Europe. And that affordability matters, reliability matters, and cleanliness matters. And Republicans in Utah know how to really get to all three of those things without sacrificing affordability and reliability just for the sake of cleanliness. But at the same time, we can still reduce our emissions at the same time.
Yeah, such important conversations. Not many people can say, what did you do this weekend? And a trip to Dubai, some global conversations about everything from emissions and energy to fuels and stewardship of the environment. Representative John Curtis, I hope you are at least sneaking in a nap in between votes today in our nation's capital. But thanks for your leadership on this issue, for taking the Utah model to the rest of the world in Dubai. And we look forward to having you back on the program real soon.
Thanks, Boyd. I appreciate it.
Again, that's Utah Congressman Curtis joining us on the line from our nation's capital today. We appreciate him taking some time out after what's been a crazy weekend for him. A quick trip to Dubai, important conversations there. And I think it's so crucial, and I hope you caught the nuance to all of this. I love the fact that Representative Curtis talked about the fact that we often hear the word climate, and it's become a negative. It's a violent word. It's a weaponized word. And it shouldn't be, because we all want to be good stewards of the environment. We all want to make sure we leave this place a little bit better for our children and grandchildren and beyond. And so let's have a different kind of conversation about it. And it's one of the things that I think Representative Curtis is doing, is taking that Utah model to say, look, we can do this different and we can do it better. And we don't have to do it from the extremes of the left or the extremes of the right. But there are real common sense solutions that will work, that will produce real results. I thought it was so important that Representative Curtis said, look, even if we cut our emissions to zero, and if all those industrial countries did the same, it only reduced things by about 12% in 2050. So it has to be a global conversation, and everybody has to be on board. And we can't just weaponize the words and demonize those, especially those in Utah who are producing energy, that are part of the solution, because it's cleaner, it's better. And so instead, let's change the dynamic. Let's quit pointing fingers and placing blame, and let's start looking at paths to solutions. And I think it's important that Representative Curtis had a seat at the table for the state of Utah and for the country in Dubai with other world leaders to say, okay, let's really have a conversation about energy. And I just want to repeat what he said. I thought it was so interesting, his conversation with that representative from Germany, who now they're more dependent on Russian natural gas, which funds Vladimir Putin and is much dirtier and more harmful to the environment than what they could get from the United States. And so we're having the wrong conversations about the wrong things. And it takes events like this, imperfect as they are, to have some of those conversations begin, to have a spark that we can fan into something that will actually change the game and be better for the environment, better for everyone. And again, that's a quick trip. That's a brutal trip for Congressman Curtis, but an important conversation for the state and for the nation, and we applaud that. All right, we'll step aside for a quick break. When we come back, Derek Brown, who just announced today that he is formally running to be Utah's next Attorney General. He will join us live in studio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It is the beginning of a season that should rekindle hope.
Casualties in this war, hard to comprehend.
Homelessness in Utah has been steadily increasing.
News is more than information. Spend your day with people who do more than report, who enjoy and celebrate Utah.
Did I just almost call her Dr. Jennifer Aniston?
I love stories like that.
Me too. The neighborhood school that looked like a spaceship.
They're not beautiful structures.
We promise to remember what's really important. You. A holiday promise from KSL News Radio.
It's not too late to save big on your holiday carpet cleanings. The Zero Res holiday sale ends today. Schedule your carpet cleaning today and pay just $25 per room. That's right, the $25 deal is back just in time for your holiday cleaning. Zero Res is the only no residue carpet cleaner in the area. With their ZR water, there's no soaps, no shampoos, and with no residue left behind, your carpets stay cleaner longer. Plus, with a no residue cleaning, you don't have to worry about any nasty chemicals left behind either. For carpets, ducts, tile, furniture, and more, Zero Res is the right way to clean. And if you've been waiting to get cleaned up for the holidays, this is the sale you've been waiting for. $25 per room for carpet cleaning. Sale ends tonight. Must schedule Monday or Tuesday, and you must clean before the new year. You don't have to clean today, but you do have to get on the schedule. Call Zero Res right now or jump online to schedule. $25 per room. Minimums apply. Zero Res, from Nephi to Ogden and everywhere in between. Online at zerores.com.
The Salt Lake Chamber is Utah's voice for business. Okay, that sounds great, but what does it really mean? Well, as Utah's largest and longest standing business association, they support and champion community prosperity throughout the state. And if you're in business, well, that's a very good thing for you. Be sure to listen to the Chamber's Speaking on Business, weekdays at 7:20, 11:55, and 5:20 p.m. on KSL News Radio.
This is the lunch rush at your local deli. Orders are flying in. Online, on the phone, and in person.
Order for Nick.
So is it possible that fast internet could help your business outrun the rush? It is with Comcast Business. Up-leveling your speed with gig speed Wi-Fi, powering all your devices, and fast downloads and uploads, powered by the next generation 10G network. With Comcast Business, next-level speed isn't just possible, it's happening. Comcast Business, powering possibilities.
Get started with fast speeds and advanced security for $59.99 a month for 12 months with a 2-year agreement. Plus, ask how to get up to an $800 prepaid card with a qualifying internet package. Call or go online to learn more. Ends 12/20/2023. Restrictions apply. Requires paperless billing and automatic payments. New 50 megabits per second internet and Security Edge customers only. Equipment, taxes, and fees extra. Gig Wi-Fi requires gig internet and compatible router.
Any Hour Services can help you make sure your furnace keeps you warm this winter. Whether you need a tune-up, a repair, or a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
Dear Santa, thank you so much for remembering me this year. Christmas was the best. Thank you for the shoes, and I love the coat you brought. It's so cute and so warm.
At KSL, it's our hope that every child will have a warm and joyful holiday season. Please donate generously to KSL's Quarters for Christmas.
Every dollar raised goes to buy shoes and warm clothes for Utah children in need. Give what you can at kslquarters.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Becky Bruce. First, Ukrainian President Zelensky has arrived in Washington to make his case for more American aid. Second, a mountain lion sighting in Cottonwood Heights caught on doorbell camera has neighbors a little concerned. And third, retail thefts are finally decreasing nationwide, but the level of violence associated with them is on the rise. Right now, we have mostly cloudy skies, 37 degrees in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. I am Boyd Matheson. And, of course, as we roll our way into 2024, there's going to be a lot of big national things happening in 2024 when it comes to elections. But we're going to have some pretty big deals happening right here in the state of Utah, including the race for Attorney General. Of course, current Attorney General Sean Reyes has signaled that he won't be running for re-election. And it just so happens someone today announced that they are officially running, and that person is Derek Brown. And in the spirit of full disclosure, of course, Derek Brown has been one of the hosts of KSL at Night. Derek and I also have a connection. We both survived working in the United States Senate together. But Derek, welcome to the show, and we can officially welcome you to the 2024 race for Utah's next Attorney General.
I appreciate that, and that's a great way to put it, that we survived. Although both you and I now have gray hairs, and maybe we can blame those on the Senate, right?
Yes, always. We blame everything on the Senate around here.
Exactly.
So give us your sense. Obviously, this is a big race. It's been a position in Utah that has not been without controversy in terms of who's in there. But just for our listeners, I just want you to tee it up. What is the job of the Attorney General, and why do you want to sit in that chair?
Well, okay, let's start with what the job is. And I mean, ultimately, and I can lay this out. This isn't something that you probably ever hear, but I'll for your listeners, let me just put it this way: the Attorney General is running the largest law firm in the state of Utah. And it has one client. Most law firms have lots of clients. Hundreds of clients. Yeah. This one has one client. It's the state of Utah. It's the people of Utah. It's the agencies. Yeah. And so ultimately, that is one thing that the Attorney General's office is doing that you don't hear about a lot. A second thing is protecting people, and particularly children. There is a statutory requirement that gives the Attorney General's office a special sort of powers and authority when it comes to protecting some of the most vulnerable, including children. And then the last thing that when I look at the Attorney General's office, the reality is we have checks and balances built into our system, right? And everyone knows legislative, judicial, and executive branches have these checks and balances. Well, the 10th Amendment sets up this really, I think, healthy tension between the federal government and the state government. And the federal government's role isn't the right word. Their inclination is to overstep their boundaries. That's what they do, right? It's built into the system. It's the nature of human beings. Yeah. It's the nature of the federal government to press as far as it can. And so when it does that, the states have a right, they have a responsibility to push back. And the person that does that for the state of Utah is the Attorney General. Yeah. And so from my standpoint, those are the three critical pieces that the Attorney General for Utah does.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that we often miss with the Attorney General. They really are the line of defense for federalism, that things can be done at the state level, that the federal government can't overreach into a lot of those places. I think that's an important distinction for everybody. So why you? Why now?
Well, I've always believed, and you've seen this before, that the way our system is designed politically is for people to step up, serve, and then step out. Or step aside. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Step up, serve, and step aside. And in my life, I've had an opportunity to do this a number of times. I did this, for instance, when I served in the House of Representatives, when I served with a U.S. senator, like, as you indicated earlier, like when I was the state party chair. I stepped up, I took a turn, I did the best I could, and then I stepped aside. And I had people saying, "Hey, run again, run again." I said, "No, you know what? This is the way the system works. You step up, you serve, you step aside." And I see an opportunity for someone to step up, serve, make a difference, and then step aside. And so that's what I'm doing. And my decision, honestly, we've been looking at it for a long time. Governor Herbert chaired my exploratory committee. And the truth is, whether the current Attorney General was going to run or not was never a function. We were indicating that we were looking at whether it made sense to do this and whether I could make a difference.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, that idea of seasonal service, that you come in for a season, you work like crazy, you make a difference, you leave a legacy, and then you get out of Dodge.
It
and
seems
go do something
old-fashioned.
else. Yeah.
I mean, it's too bad that we don't see more of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the more we could see that in all positions, I think would be better for the country, would be better for our communities as well. So as you look at the nature of campaigns these days, obviously it's a very interesting age to be a candidate for office. And I think a lot of us don't realize the process that you have to go through to get to that decision point. And so for you, what was that tipping point moment where you realize, and as a family, you say, okay, this is our season to go do something?
That's an interesting question, and kind of a personal one. And ultimately, I think it has to be personal. And my family and I had long conversations, and we looked at our state. I love the state of Utah. I've always been interested in serving where I can. My background, the few people know, is I'm a lawyer by training, right? I've spent time in law firms. I've clerked for federal judges. That is my background. But as I looked at what the Attorney General does and what I believe are the needs, and the really unique needs, because right now the Attorney General's office, for those who are in it, know that it is a very difficult time, in particular because the legal market is shifting dramatically with all these major law firms coming into Salt Lake. It's a growing market, taking attorneys out of the office, and it's really hard to compete.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, there are a lot of unique challenges that this office faces in 2023. And as a family, we just said, you know what, this is our season. Let's step up, serve, and then step aside.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to ask you the question I have asked every candidate I've ever interviewed, from a county commissioner or a school board to someone running for president of the United States. I always ask the same question. Campaigns are hard. This is brutal, brutal stuff on individuals, on families. What will make all of that headache, heartache, exhaustion, traveling the state, making your case, what will make all of that worth it, even if you get to that first Tuesday of November in 2024 and you come up short and you don't win?
That's a great question. 1,000 new friends. I love meeting people, and I think if I can say, look, I've got 1,000 new friends that I didn't know before, and also if I can change the type of debate and make it really substantive, because I think a lot of times, especially with races that are statewide, you don't really get a lot of substance. You get a lot of bumper stickers, and so I'd like to change the debate. I'd like to make sure that we focus on the issues that matter to Utah, and I'd like to do it in a tone that is different than what we see online. Because I've been really disturbed by this, the division that we have, the divisiveness, and the acrimony we have online. I'd love to elevate that conversation myself and figure out a way to have a debate that is substantive, that's enjoyable, and that changes the course. And if I can do that and, rack up 100 new friends, people in Utah that I didn't know beforehand, then I go back to my amazing family and my life and call it good.
We always say the worst thing that could happen is you can win.
Exactly.
And then the real work begins.
Absolutely.
Derek Brand, brand new candidate running for Utah Attorney General. Derek, I know this will be the first of many conversations that we have. Good luck in the race. We appreciate you having on Inside Sources today. And that wraps up hour number 1 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We'll step aside for some top-of-the-hour news, but don't go anywhere. When we come back at 2:05, Rabbi Brad Hirschfield is going to join us from New York to talk about what's going on college campuses. You don't want to miss that conversation. Stick around. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
Listen at home on any smart speaker.
And in your car at 102.7 FM.
This is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Becky Bruce. KSL's top story this hour, a mountain lion spotted on a Cottonwood Heights doorbell camera not once but twice in the last 10 days. KSL News Radio's Emma Keddington has more.
Faith Heaton-Jolly with the Division of Wildlife Resources says often in neighborhoods close to the mountains, cougars are just passing through on their way to find food. So if you see a cougar once, let it be. But she says if you see it twice, it could pose a larger threat. And then it's time to call the Division of Wildlife Resources.
Once reported, the division can help find and relocate the cougar away from your neighborhood. Our top national story this hour from ABC News, President Biden ordering the Pentagon to release a $200 million military aid package to Ukraine. That's as Congress considers more funding for the war-torn country while Ukraine's president pleads for help.
Mr. President, I've called on Congress to do the right thing, to stand with Ukraine and to stand up for freedom.
Many congressional Republicans have said they won't send aid to Ukraine until they see a plan to win and funding for U.S. border security. Ford says it's scaling back production of its electric F-150 Lightning pickup truck. Sales growth has been slower than expected. Your money at this moment, the Dow is up 173 points, the S&P 500 up 21. Coming up, we'll check your drive. KSL traffic is next. KSL News Time 2:01.
Early mornings can be hard enough, just getting yourself going.
We try to make it a little easier with news and weather from comfortable, trusted anchors and reporters.
Join us on Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9
on KSL News Radio.
You can't expect a policeman to unclog your drain. You shouldn't ask a teacher to change your oil. And you wouldn't want a fireman to clean your teeth. So why would we let politicians take over our internet service? That's just not what they do. Experience proves government-run networks mean waste, corruption, and failure. One example, called Utopia, promised to provide internet service in 16 cities within a few years. But over 20 years and hundreds of millions of dollars later, a better name would be dystopia. They say it's almost complete. We say stop wasting our money. Go to nogovinternet.com and tell lawmakers enough is enough. Local tax dollars are precious, and public employees have plenty to do already. Don't let politicians mess with our internet. Paid for by nogovinternet.com, a project of Domestic Policy Caucus.
Home for the holidays? Sounds nice, doesn't it? What if your home excluded summer yard work and was a one-level luxurious townhome with spacious rooms? Sounds even better. Preview your new home for the holidays at an open house December 18th at Nilsson Homes' newest single-level luxury townhome in Bluffview. These homes are move-in ready, no yard work, snow blowing, and close to what you love and enjoy with easy commutes. Experience the Nilsson Homes difference of what spacious single-level townhome floor plans and no stairs looks like. Nilsson Homes has been building across the Wasatch Front for over 45 years, accommodating all the things you need combined with the things you love. Ask about end-of-year promotional savings. Experience your new home for the holidays at their open house event December 18th, 5 to 7 p.m. Pictures with Santa and warm churros at the newest Nilsson community, 227 North, 3830 West Point. Visit Nilsson Homes Communities at nilssonhomes.com, Nilson homes.com.
Every year I tell myself, Doug, you can't procrastinate. It's time to get into Burt Brothers. Make sure that the vehicle I drive, the vehicles that Dee drives, and our family vehicles are all ready for winter. And Burt Brothers, boy, as these temperatures start to drop, soon the snowflakes are going to fall, the roads are going to be slick. You need peace of mind on Utah's snowy roads. Winter tires from Burt Brothers, they make all the difference. You can drive with confidence. Specialized tires designed to grip the road in the harshest conditions. They give you better traction, handling, shorter braking distances, and the gift of safety. for you and your loved ones. And right now, save up to $130 back on 4 Bridgestone Blizzak tires through December 16th. That's only at Burt Brothers with complete auto care. They can take care of it all. Make sure you're not off on the side of the road with a little help from your friends at Burt Brothers. And there's a location for Burt Brothers near you.
Positive mortgage news? Interest rates have dropped and trending down from 2023 yearly highs. Click loansbyrick.com. Purchase or cashback loans. Visit loansbyrick.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
Got a nasty crash in the intersection of westbound Wall Avenue at 31st Street in Ogden. Weber County drivers, that might be a spot you want to avoid. Also, a rollover accident with crews still at the scene in Murray at Fashion Boulevard. That's about 3rd East and 6100 South. The Zero Res Holiday Sale is on now. Just $25 per room for carpet cleaning. Schedule Monday or Tuesday and clean before the new year. Schedule today online at zerores.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
We're headed up to 40 degrees this afternoon with cloudy skies. Tonight's low 30, then hazy and 42 tomorrow. Right now, it's mostly cloudy, 38 degrees in downtown Salt Lake City. I'm Becky Bruce, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, the headlines have continued to focus on last week's disappointing testimony from Ivy League presidents before Congress. One president has resigned. One has sort of apologized, not apologized, but kept her post. So we want to get beyond the headlines, as we always do, and look at what are the lessons for us in terms of compassion, moral relativism, and the change needed on college campuses and in our own communities. So let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, I think to say that the testimony before Congress last week from the Ivy League presidents was more than just disappointing. It was disconcerting to so many. About the attitude, the flippant responses that came, and then sort of the apology, non-apology things that followed. And so we want to dig into this from a bigger perspective. We'll dive into this specifically, but I want to broaden it in terms of what it means, not just on college campuses, but what does it mean in our communities? What does it mean to each of us individually? And really thrilled to have one of the great gifts of my 2023, and that is the new friendship with Rabbi Brad Hirschfield, rabbi, author, president of the National Jewish Center for Learning and Leadership. And Rabbi Hirschfield, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Boyd. And I can honestly say I feel equally blessed by our emerging friendship and am glad to be with you today, even though the circumstances are, as you said, pretty disturbing for all of us, whether we're on college campus or not, but as Americans and as human beings.
Yeah. We always say on this show that the words have meaning and the meaning matters. And so let's dig into this a little bit, especially in the context of the president of Harvard, who did sort of give somewhat of, I can't even call it an apology, but the words do matter. And so help us break that down in terms of what should we really interpret from that, and then let's start marching our path forward.
Okay, well, I think you're absolutely right. Words do matter, and I want to be clear. Even though I would not have agreed with her retention had she been more clear and more straightforward, I would have still disagreed with what she said and how she behaved.
Yeah.
But I would have had a greater measure of respect. See, I can live with people reaching conclusions, even conclusions I loathe, if we can be honest and self-aware. And those are the real casualties here. But before we get to that, I do want to respond because you're right. It was an apology that wasn't an apology. First of all, they leaned, that is the Harvard Corporation and the university's leadership, in supporting President Gay, saying that, well, she did apologize. The problem is, if you look at what she apologized for, it was the wrong apology. She apologized for hurting the feelings and causing distress to the Jewish students on campus. First of all, her presumption that when you fail to stand up in defense of any minority, racial, religious, sexual, political, you are actually failing all of those minorities. So the harm that was created was not simply to Jews, and I say that as a rabbi. But there are bigger fish to fry here. She failed because she didn't stand up in the right way, and then she only could imagine, well, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. Her failure and what she needed to apologize for was her absence of moral clarity and her failure of leadership when she testified before Congress. Those are the things that she needed to apologize for. So ironically, in her pseudo-apology, which I'm sure was sincere, that's what's really disturbing about it, her misconstruing of what went wrong was that she really doesn't understand it was a failure of moral clarity and a failure of leadership, but that she may have offended particular members of a minority on her campus. So even if it was an apology, which it wasn't, it's the wrong apology.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, if you give me 30 more seconds, she went on to say, I should have said that there is no place for that kind of hatred at Harvard. The problem is, there is a place for that kind of hatred at Harvard. And that's what we've witnessed over the last 8 weeks. So again, if she had said there has been a place for that kind of hatred at Harvard, and here's what I'm going to do to try and change it, I don't know that I still would have been comfortable with them retaining her as president, but I would have understood that her words would not have done violence to honesty and self-awareness, and those are the real casualties here.
Yeah, and I think that's such a crucial thing. I want to unpack that a little bit more as we look at not only this moral clarity, but I think the test of leadership in the 21st century is moral imagination that requires the kind of leadership to say, no, that's not acceptable on campus, and where it has been, here's what we're doing to stamp that out, or here's how we're changing the dynamic. Here's how I'm changing the conversation as the leader on this campus.
Right. That's exactly right. There were no to-dos connected to any of what she said. And one more breast-beating recitation from someone in a position of authority or famous or anything else, where this has become part of the, wash, rinse, repeat cycle of our culture, with no to-dos, that's actually what's most dangerous. See, you can get the apology wrong if you're willing to be personally responsible and accountable, because that's what leadership is about. Leadership is not about coercing people to do what you want. Leadership is about the authority that flows from taking responsibility, first for yourself and then for everyone else in your sphere of influence. And she failed to do either of those.
Yeah, leadership is what leadership does, and this was a failure of doing. And it also gets to this whole idea of the fact that she went to the my truth component to all of this. One of the other things we know from great leaders throughout history, religious, political, business, and otherwise, is that they do understand that truth is truth. And trying to split hairs or to walk the fine line or to do the politically expedient thing based on my truth really devolves, in a conversation you and I have had before, it devolves any truth. And then we're left with what?
Well, I think you're right, although I might surprise you. I would be willing to make room for my truth, even though I think it's usually a death spiral into a kind of dangerous relativism.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate that if someone says that phrase with a measure of intellectual humility, then I think there is room to talk about my truth. But the only way you know it's about real humility and not moral relativism is back to what you said. Leadership is as leadership does. If you're not willing to act in light of your truth, then it really isn't your truth at all, is it?
Love that. That's so powerful. It has to be not just something that you can spit out in a phrase, but as you said, it has to be, what are we going to actually do about it? How do we actually live this and make it happen? We often talk...
Exactly, and we can get it wrong. We can make mistakes with our actions, but to fail to act is always unacceptable.
Yeah, that's right. It is that failure to act where the greatest devastation, some of the greatest tragedies in world history have happened because people may have understood the real truth, but didn't have that moral imagination to explore what happens if we live that particular truth.
Exactly.
And so
exactly right.
As we round this out, give us some perspective in terms of bringing this right down to the community, to the neighborhood, to the home, and to each of us as we look in the mirror on a wide range of issues, not just this particular issue, but on a wide range of issues. How should we think a little different about all of this?
So I love that question, and I think ultimately it does affect all of us, and I'll give you three quick ones. The first, and it has to, we haven't talked about, are the members of the faculty that supported retaining President Gay as president of Harvard, including people who spoke out knowing that her behavior before Congress was reprehensible. Now all of a sudden, they're like, no, but we should keep her. And what it really reduced down to, and forgive me, these are brilliant people. They're tenured faculty at Harvard, right? They're not stupid. These are brilliant people, but they were brilliant people behaving like children whose argument essentially is, you're not the boss of me. I know the person in charge here behaved badly, but you shouldn't tell me that. Well, the first thing to remember is each of us is the boss of ourselves, and the fear that someone else is the boss of us will paralyze us and keep us from doing what we know to be right, and will keep us from speaking out when the wrong has been done. That's never a healthy place to be. So any argument that's fundamentally about trying to show someone else they don't have control over us and leaves us defending something we know to be wrong, that's always a mistake. Number two, be honest. I really mean it. I can imagine, you talk about moral imagination, arguments that would have led to retaining her as the president of Harvard. I wouldn't have agreed with them, but I can imagine them if they had been honest. If she had just said, you know what, I actually said what I feel. My truth is that some people deserve a more vigorous defense than others, and that's who I am. Now, I find that repugnant, but at least that would have been honest.
Yeah.
And in the absence of that kind of honesty, we can't even have the conversations that you create on air every day, which are predicated upon the fact that we can disagree as long as we're willing to be civil, honest, and self-aware. Those are the three ingredients we need to restore and then build on the necessary trust in our institutions and in one another.
Fantastic. As always, Rabbi Brad Hirschfield, rabbi, author, president of the National Jewish Center for Learning and Leadership. Rabbi Hirschfield, thank you so much for helping us elevate the conversation today, looking at it from a different angle and well beyond the headlines. It's something we all need to go back and listen to a little later on for a repeat and a little deeper dive. And thank you again so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Fantastic perspective there from Rabbi Brad Hirschfield. He's become one of my favorite thinkers. And a new one that because we get to be curious on this show, because we get to have extraordinary guests from all around the world come on and talk and enlighten us and challenge us and explore principles and ideas. That's why we do this show. And Rabbi Hirschfield is one of those great thinkers that's helping all of us at every level think just a little better, to think again, to think a little different, and to think outside of ourselves in terms of what's my responsibility to make this world just a little better place. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Stream BYU basketball.
Richie gets into the paint. Floater, yes!
Hear that breaking story with a flick of your wrist.
Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy resigning rather suddenly.
Get instant alerts on Utah news and weather. It's so easy. Get in your phone's app store and download the mobile app for KSL News Radio.
Introducing Yes Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. We're bringing all of Utah's favorite HVAC, plumbing, and electrical brands under one roof. Whether it's a small clog or a larger mainline sewer drain issue, the experienced technicians at Yes are ready to solve all of your drain problems. Take advantage of our 83 or It's Free mainline drain clearing special. Feel secure knowing the trusted professionals at Yes guarantee that if we can't clear it, you don't pay for it. Visit theyesmancan.com for details, terms, and conditions.
I'm a big believer in investing into what the wealthiest people in the world invest into. But it's not easy to know exactly what that is, and it hasn't always been possible for regular folks like you and I. But that's changing. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and if you've done a good job acquiring some assets, now is the time to consider private equity. Private equity is ownership of private companies that aren't traded on the stock market and in most cases are very exclusive. Examples could include ownership of apartments or nursing homes, dental practices, solar farms, you name it. Why do so many billionaires invest into private equity? Because of historically low correlation to the stock market and historically higher returns. If you have a goal with your portfolio but aren't there yet, call Trajan Wealth today. Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. May require accreditation.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those round trips that you plan in advance, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends for which you make a group chat 3 months before so that nobody or anything is missing. Or your daughter's first birthday party. You planned it with such dedication that instead of the first, it felt like our 15s. The same way you plan each detail for those moments. Start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit, and make a family communications plan. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Hello, car donation hotline.
Hi, I'd like to donate a car to the Utah Kidney Foundation. Are you in Utah?
Awesome. Let's get some info and we'll send you a tow truck.
But I want my car donation to benefit my neighbor in Farmington who needs a transplant. Are you in Utah?
That's a gnaw. I'm in SoCal, but you're still donating to charity.
What charity?
Doesn't matter.
Yes, I want my donation to stay in Utah.
Righteous dude. You need to call Tow Cars in Utah. Locals only, am I right?
Oh, yeah. I remember tow cars with a K like kidney. It's on a billboard somewhere. TOWKARS.org. That's it. Towcars.org.
If you'd like your vehicle donation to help Utah kidney patients in the Beehive State, please use the web address on their billboard, towcars.org, to donate your old car or truck. That's TOWK like kidney, ARS. Towcars.org.
This holiday season, visit Boot Barn for top quality gifts that pay tribute to the lasting heritage of the West. From handcrafted cowboy boots and American-made felt hats to hand-stitched leather jackets, our in-store experts will help guide you as you shop, assisting with boot fitting and providing complimentary hat shaping. This holiday, share a piece of the American spirit. Boot Barn. Unwrap the West.
I'm Dave Cawley, investigative journalist and host of the podcast Cold. Don't miss Cold's new Season 3, where I look into the unsolved disappearance of Cherie Warren, a woman last seen leaving her job at a Salt Lake City office in 1985. Police cast suspicion on Cherie's estranged husband and boyfriend, but never made any arrests or recovered Cherie's remains. Find Cold Season 3, The Search for Cherie, anywhere you get your podcasts.
Merry Christmas, honey.
A Bernina embroidery machine? It's wonderful.
Bernina products are wonderful Christmas gifts that you'll love and use. Take advantage of these holiday specials at Dave's Bernina in St. George and Provo.
Save thousands of dollars on world-famous Bernina sewing machines, such as the B700E for $2,999, the B500E $1,999, and get a free $2,000 embroidery module when you purchase the 770 Cave machine.
48 months, no interest on certain machines.
Purchase the L890 Serger and receive a free Bernina Studio cabinet, a $3,250 value. How about $2,400 worth of free gifts when you buy a Bernina B790 Pro model?
25% off all Bernina luggage, embroidery hoops, and presser feet.
Amazing bargains on previously owned and demo machines with warranties at Dave's Bernina, 691 East St. George Boulevard and 2017 North 550 West in Provo.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Becky Bruce. First, the latest government report shows inflation is slowing, but not necessarily at the supermarket. Second, prescription opioids may be down, but the DEA says they're still seeing an increase in fentanyl, a street opioid, across Utah. And third, Ford says it's scaling back production of its electric F-150 Lightning pickup truck amid disappointing sales. Right now, it's 38 degrees in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. If you're just joining us, we're standing by for a scheduled press conference with President Joe Biden and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. They have been meeting at the White House. They were scheduled to begin their press conference about 2:15. And as we've been going through the program today, we've been talking kind of behind the headlines of what is going on, what this trip to Washington, D.C. is all about, what's at stake, and why is it that we have all of these things muddled together between border security on our southern border and immigration and funding for Ukraine's battle against Russia and Vladimir Putin, along with, we haven't even talked about Israel funding, which was all part of the package that President Biden put forward earlier in the year. And so there's a lot of finger pointing, there's a lot of placing blame that's going on, but there's an important conversation that needs to be had. We'll go live to that conference as soon as President Biden and President Zelensky step to the microphones in Washington, D.C. I want to go back to some of our earlier conversation, and earlier in the day, CNN White House reporter Manu Raju asked Republican Senator Langford from Oklahoma if Republicans were willing to provide aid without dealing with the border security issue, again, separating those two pieces. Here's that exchange.
We have a responsibility in the United States of America. That would mean me going back to my state and saying I care about people in other countries, but I don't care about what's happening in my own country. It's important that we actually do 2 things at once here. We've got to actually pay attention to our own needs while we're also dealing with the needs around the world as well. There's no way to get it done this week. There's no way to be able to get it done this week.
So you think this is going into 2025?
I'd love to be able to see it resolved sooner than that, but if we can't get to a resolution on this, this will actually go into 2024 until we can actually get it resolved.
So that was Republican Senator Langford from Oklahoma. He's been one of the bipartisan folks working on the border portion of all of this. His tag team partner was Senator Murphy from Connecticut, and they had made some progress, I think, in terms of an agreement around the southern border and securing it as part of this package that the president proposed. But it appears that that is dragging and stalling. And with the clock ticking, the House exits on Thursday this week. At least they're scheduled to leave town for the rest of the year on Thursday. The Senate is scheduled to leave town on Friday. So we'll see if anything can be moved or moved forward there. If you missed it earlier in the show, I spoke with David Beer from Cato Institute about the immigration component of the negotiations in Congress. And he spoke of one real issue at the border, which, as he put it, doesn't actually focus around our current rules regarding asylum. Really interesting. Take a listen.
The main issue has nothing to do with asylum. That you got to just put that whole idea that people are being released because they are requesting asylum at the border. The reality is they are being released at the border because there are not enough planes, there are not enough beds, there are not enough places to put all the people who cross the border. So right now, under the Biden administration, they have an asylum rule that says you will be assumed to be ineligible for asylum if you cross the border illegally. And they have only been able to apply that rule to about 10% of all the people who've crossed the border since they enacted it in May.
So, again, we're often looking at just tweaking the margins of a lot of these issues. And we do the same thing on health care. We do the same thing on Social Security. We do the same thing on spending. We just tweak at the borders of it all, which doesn't really make a whole lot of difference in the end. So we end up having the fake fight and the false choice. That's where we end up. Now, in a really interesting set of moments today, you had both the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, as well as Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, both Republicans, asking the president to become more involved in the negotiations with Republicans and Democrats. You don't hear that very often. Here's how Mitch McConnell explained it earlier.
What I have said to him is the only way we'll get an agreement
is for you to be involved. Don't just punt the ball up to Senate Democrats. They may never get there. And so it's been difficult to get the kind of support out of the administration itself. Look, we all know he's the only one who can sign a bill into law. Without him, there is no deal.
So that was Mitch McConnell earlier. And again, so everyone is calling for the president to lean in. After all, this was his proposal to begin with. The aid package that included aid for Israel, aid for Ukraine, and dealing with the southern border and security issues there. It's the president's deal. The president has been kind of leading from the middle ever since he laid it out and has really left it to the House and the Senate to figure it out. And so I think in these waning days, I think as that we have the world watching today with President Zelensky here in the United States, that this is the time for President Biden to lean in, to be part of the negotiations, to be in the room where it happens, not just his people, not just those around him. The president needs to be in the room and be part of that process. I think that is the best chance, maybe the only chance, that any of this does get done before everyone leaves for the holiday. Of course, the impact of not getting it done means all of this gets kicked into January. And while there are no specific deadlines, every day of delay, I think, is hurtful and harmful to the cause of the Ukrainian people. And not just them being able to defend and hold ground against Vladimir Putin and the Russian invasion of their sovereign territory. It prevents them from being able to do the most important thing, and that is to win. And so there's a way to get through all of this, and we've continued to break down what it really is and what it really means and why it really matters. And so often it's not just a blank check that is being written that President Zelensky gets to go cash somewhere and do whatever he wants. Most of this is done by getting munitions done here in the U.S. and shipping them over. That's U.S. jobs. That's things going into the United States economy. And it's replenishing our stockpiles and our shelves in terms of our military hardware. We've been giving them the stuff out of the back room, the leftovers, and now is an opportunity to actually do that a little bit better. So there's a lot underneath the headlines in all of this. We're going to continue to stand by for the press conference with President Zelensky and President Joe Biden. We'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. The moment they step to those microphones, we will jump in live here on KSL News Radio. So stick around. More Inside Sources coming up next.
.231 at KSL News Radio. I'm Becky Bruce. KSL's top local story this hour. A new law enforcement bulletin warns of heightened threats of violence at upcoming holiday events.
According to a confidential intelligence bulletin issued to law enforcement and obtained by ABC News, threats to public gatherings throughout the winter, but especially those connected to the holidays, will likely be amplified by the Israel-Hamas war. Possible threats, the bulletin says, will likely emanate from lone offenders, including domestic violent extremists and those who want to carry out hate crimes. Alex Stone, ABC News.
Retail thefts by organized gangs are decreasing, but not the violence that goes along with them. Davis County Attorney Troy Rawlings says Utah does have enhanced penalties for crimes when more than 3 people are involved.
Prosecutors can go after those if there are weapons displayed. Everything from aggravated assault, robbery, burglary. These are all felony-level statutes in addition to the retail theft.
Rawlings says not only the individuals but also the organizations face enhanced penalties. The Dow Jones just posted its 3rd highest finish ever as investors await an interest rate decision tomorrow. Your money at this moment, the Dow ends the day up 173 points at 36,578. Coming up, hazy skies are here again. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time 2:33.
Start your days with knowledgeable, friendly voices telling you about the latest news and weather out there.
Hi, this is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
In the business of waking you up each morning from 5 to 9.
On KSL News Radio.
Well, it is the holiday season, so you should be treated a little extra special, and our friends at Hercules Credit Union are ready to do just that. Hercules Credit Union has been about growing stronger together since 1946, and they're going to prove it, that they really are here to help you not just feel special, but to be special with some extraordinary opportunities. You can qualify for a free Premier checking account for a limited time. All you have to do is open a new checking account at Hercules Credit Union. They'll immediately upgrade you for free to Premier Checking status. Now, with that, you get all the benefits that go with it: identity theft protection, travel benefits, perks, cellular care coverage, and a host of other benefits that go with being a Premier Checking account member at Hercules Credit Union. You can find their locations in Taylorsville, Harriman, Riverton, and Salt Lake City. Or as always with our friends at Hercules Credit Union, you can find them online at HerculesCU.com. That's HerculesCU.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
We have had a report of lights out by KSL Zone Steve Carlson at 4th West and 6th South. If you're exiting off of northbound I-15 coming into downtown Salt Lake City, you want to definitely be careful there. They have cleared the accident at Wall Avenue and 31st Street in Ogden. Enjoy Utah's beautiful snow and whole family fun with winter tubing at Soldier Hollow in Midway. Experience longer tubing lanes, shorter lines, and more fun. Book your session now at UtahOlympicLegacy.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
We're headed up to 40 degrees this afternoon. In fact, we're almost there. Cloudy skies, tonight's low 30, then hazy and 42 tomorrow. Right now, mostly cloudy, 39 degrees. I'm Becky Bruce, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, one of the last big inflation reports of 2023 is out. So what did it say about the economy? According to the report, inflation slowed to 3.1% in November. Good sign for the Fed, but prices are still incredibly high. People are still a bit grumpy. What does that mean for President Biden rolling into 2024? Is it too early for victory laps? What is the Fed going to do next as they convene to help us get beyond the numbers? As always, we look to Jeff Cox, the economics editor for CNBC.com. And Jeff, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Boyd. Always great to be here.
So give us the baseline in terms of the numbers. What do they mean, and what should we be watching?
So the numbers came in pretty much as expected. You'd run them down before. We did see the decline in the modest decline in the headline number. The interesting thing, though, is that core number still remains at 4%. That's ex-food and energy. Of course, who needs those things? But the Fed looks at those core numbers as indicative of what the longer-term trajectory of inflation is. So the market's kind of standing at the starting line, holding that starter's gun up in the air and wants the Fed to go take a victory lap. But I don't think that Powell's quite ready to do that yet. There are still a number of things within these numbers that suggest that inflation still, while not as high as it was before, is still elevated. And, I think the American public, and this is important for President Biden, isn't going to be happy until they start to see prices come down. A slowing rate of inflation really is not that much consolation at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge for the president is how do you walk that tightrope the same way the Federal Reserve is walking that tightrope in terms of the interest rates. So give us a little peek into what you think the Fed may do. Again, not a victory lap, but what are some of those numbers underneath that they might be looking at as they consider what's next?
Well, I actually just posted a story up on CNBC.com. Your readers can take a look at it. It's just basically, here's everything to expect from the Fed meeting tomorrow. Okay, so the bottom line everybody knows is the Fed's not going to be raising rates. But I do think that while they're not going to I don't know if they're going to start talking about cutting rates, but I do think this meeting this week is significant in the fact that it will be, I think, classifiable as a policy pivot. I do think that they start to pivot and say that, look, we're done raising rates, even though maybe they won't use those exact words, but that this is probably the end of it. And I think when you do get into the dot plot of individual members' expectations, you'll continue to see 1, 2, maybe even 3 cuts for next year, which is some solace, I guess, for the market, but it's not what the market's pricing in right now. The market's pricing in up to 5 rate cuts, equivalent of 1.25 percentage points. So it's still very aggressive pricing from the markets. There's no way they're going to get that from the Fed tomorrow. The Fed's going to be much more circumspect. How the market will react to that, I think, is going to be very dependent on the way that Jay Powell communicates where he stands and where the committee stands on inflation and on policy going forward.
Yeah, that communication strategy has to be every bit as sophisticated as the policy strategy. I think, especially in today's world, and because this idea of the disinflation is good news for the economists, but for the consumers, you have to talk to them like consumers. And so, walk us through what that might look like, both from the Fed standpoint, but also from the president's standpoint, especially rolling into what will be a very complicated year of 2024.
Well, I think we talked about this the last time I was on, and I'm not a political strategist, but if I was, I think what I'd be telling the president right now is stop trying to gaslight people and tell them that inflation is coming down, because it's not coming down. The pace of inflation is increasing less dramatically. So when he starts telling people, "Oh, look what a great job we're doing on inflation," it just aggravates people. I mean, and it shows up in the polling numbers. It just shows that people think he's doing a lousy job on the economy. They're mad about inflation. So stop trying to tell people what to think and tell them that, what they're seeing isn't what they're really seeing. I think that the idea is you just need to express some empathy here and say, we understand what you're going through, and we continue to work on it, and look at all these other things that are going well, and you just focus on the positive, focus on the 199,000 jobs that were created last month and a 3.7% unemployment rate, and those are good things. The consumers are still spending. Our stock market's been doing very well, obviously, this year. So I would focus on the good and stop trying to, stop trying to. I'm trying to use a nice word here, but just stop, exaggerating about inflation.
See, I think you actually should be a strategist. I think that would be really good. I think they could really use you about now to say, let's just get to the real issues here. Is there any other numbers that you're keeping your eye on that are maybe a little below the radar that may have some indication in terms of where we really go rolling into the new year?
Well, I think it's just going to be all about the consumer here. There was some other good inflation news going on this month that we saw. The University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Survey, big drop in inflation expectations. The Fed watches that one closely. It was backed up by the New York Fed Consumer Survey that came out on Monday. So it's all going to be just about watching how the holiday spending numbers are going to be huge. I think they'll really tell the story about how much consumers are, how much their appetite is for spending. And then when we get to the early part of next year, look at what the debt numbers are like. Look at how much people used their cash or had cash and how much they use credit cards, because I think if people are out there spending, and it does appear that they're spending, if you've been out shopping at all or have tried to even buy things online, I think that you see people are spending. But if they're charging things and they're still paying high interest rates next year, then I think 2024 really starts off with a retraction in terms of where the consumer's going. They're going to start pulling back. They're going to try to pay down their credit cards, and then I think this whole idea of the big slowdown in the economy in 2024 really starts to come into play.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing to be watching. How much is being bought with cash, and how much is just adding to that credit card debt challenge that many Americans are facing, because that will make for some very grumpy consumers in January if they're still paying those big interest rates and they've put more on the old credit card. Anything else we should be watching for?
It. Well, watch the election. That's going to be the big thing. I mean, it just we really start to get into the heat of the season pretty soon. I mean, it won't be long, and those first primaries will start coming around, and we'll see who this is going to end up being going toe to toe in November, and see what kind of mood that voters are in. And I think that a lot of this could have it could have a lot of ramifications. Yeah. It could bleed over into the stock market. It could bleed over into consumer spending. It could bleed over into when we get into the new year, we get the new the fourth quarter earnings results coming out. It will be interesting to see how that all comes together. And this is a tough time to be Joe Biden. It really is, and he's got his work cut out for him.
Yeah, no question about that. Newly minted political strategist Jeff Cox. No, trying out your new title. Jeff Cox, of course, is the economics editor for CNBC.com, and you can check out his new piece at CNBC.com to get the insight underneath the numbers and the headlines. As always, Jeff, we love your perspective, and thanks for walking us through it today.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, Boyd. Great talking to you.
All right. Thanks as always. Jeff Cox, economics editor for CNBC.com. I will not make him a political strategist, although he'd be a fantastic one because he's a great thinker and he understands both the numbers, the dollars and cents of it, and he also understands how important it is to communicate in a way that makes sense to the American people. Jeff was the first one who shared with us this whole thing of, look, the president keeps talking to the American people as if they were economists. And they're not. They're consumers. And so regardless of the fact that inflation is slowing, it's still going up. It's just going up at a slower rate. Doesn't help at the grocery store. Doesn't help with buying the Christmas gifts. Doesn't help with all of those other things, housing and energy and so on. And those are important things that we have to really look at. And so it is the numbers. The numbers don't lie, and you can't change the numbers. The numbers are the numbers. And you have to be able to communicate it in a way that's congruent to what the American people are experiencing, living, and feeling around the kitchen table. As always, grateful to Jeff Cox for joining us and helping us break all of that down. We are still standing by for the press conference with President Joe Biden and President Zelensky. They are about a half hour late at this point. Hopefully that means they're making some progress on a few things. Maybe they're calling a few people into the room to make something happen. That would be good news for everyone. But we'll continue to watch that. We'll step aside for one last commercial break. We'll come back and wrap up the day here on Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Some days I cover up because of my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. Now I'm hitting the road with clearer skin thanks to Skyrizi, Risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy. With Skyrizi, 3 out of 4 people achieved 90% clearer skin at 4 months. And Skyrizi is just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
Thanks to Skyrizi, there's nothing on my skin, and that means everything. Your doctor today about Skyrizi, the #1 dermatologist prescribed biologic in psoriasis, and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKY-RIZI to learn more.
It's not too late to save big on your holiday carpet cleanings. The Zero Res holiday sale ends today. Schedule your carpet cleaning today and pay just $25 per room. That's right, the $25 deal is back just in time for your holiday cleaning. Zero Res is the only no residue carpet cleaner in the area. With their ZR water, there's no soaps, no shampoos, and with no residue left behind, your carpets stay cleaner longer. Plus, with a no residue cleaning, you don't have to worry about any nasty chemicals left behind either. For carpets, ducts, tile, furniture, and more, Zero Res is the right way to clean. And if you've been waiting to get cleaned up for the holidays, this is the sale you've been waiting for. $25 per room for carpet cleaning. Sale ends tonight. Must schedule Monday or Tuesday, and you must clean before the new year. You don't have to clean today, but you do have to get on the schedule. Call Zero Res right now or jump online to schedule. $25 per room. Minimums apply. Zero Res, from Nephi to Ogden and everywhere in between. Online at ZeroRes.com.
The semi-annual sale is underway at Foothill Oriental Rugs. Jim Weber is with me, and every time I come into the store, you have such a great variety for people to choose from.
I think the thing that differentiates us from most rug stores in the country, Maria, is that I'm a direct importer, and I've been doing this for 38 years. So every rug in my store is imported directly by us, and that results in you having a unique selection when you come in. And my prices are 25% below the industry average.
Yeah, but this is a chance for folks to come in and get some great deals for the holidays.
If you've ever needed a rug, this is a great time to come in and look at rugs because, like I say, our retail prices are better than the industry and average, and right now they're marked down up to 70% off. We've got a 9x12 Tibetan contemporary rug. Retail price $77.76. It's on sale for $38.88. We got a 6x9 Indian sumac. Retail price $1,092. It's on sale for $328. It's a great time to put a rug in your home. People want their home to look right for the holidays.
Don't miss out. The semi-annual sale is underway now at Foothill Oriental Rugs, 1460 South Foothill Drive, just south of Foothill Village.
Where the steepest terrain meets the deepest snow. Snowbird is for the dedicated, those who seek a mountain experience beyond the greens, blues, and black diamonds. Averaging 500 inches of dry and light powder, unmatched steeps, and endless acres to explore. Snowbird is Utah's top powder getaway. Now with a Snowbird and Save lodging discount, receive 20% off on lift tickets, rentals, fast tracks, and more. When you stay slopeside at Snowbird, elevate your adventure with next-level lodging and skiing this season by visiting snowbird.com.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Imagine how inconvenient your life would be without power. No lights, no refrigeration, no heating or cooling, and no electronics. But with a Generac home standby generator, you'll have the power when you need it most. Generac generators automatically provide backup after sensing a power outage, so your life goes on uninterrupted. Schedule a free quote today with Genco Generators, your premier Generac service dealer in Utah. Call 801-295-0872 or online at gencogenerators.net.
Guys, does she need a little escape this year? Introducing Cozy Escape Pajamas from Pajamagram, America's PJ experts. These PJs are just the getaway she needs. So take that time off and plan a holiday staycation. Cozy Escape Pajamas make the perfect gift for your special someone who deserves a little rest and relaxation. Treat her to luxurious next-level Cozy signature soft fleece. They're as light as a dream and will keep her oh so warm, like snuggling in her favorite blanket. She'll love to cuddle in Cozy Escape PJs on those extra chilly nights. With Pajamagram, you can even add gift packaging. Order now for guaranteed delivery by Christmas. She's missed out on a lot of things she loves this year, so this Christmas, give her the escape she deserves. These new PJs are selling fast, so order today. Go to pajamagram.com right now. That's pajamagram.com to order Cozy Escape Pajamas. Pajamagram.com.
Holiday Stories from Shane Company customers.
My girlfriend thinks we're going to my parents' house to decorate the tree. She has no idea that I'm actually planning to propose. The whole family's in on it, and Shane Company helped me create the perfect ring and stay within my budget. I went with a classic ring with an oval diamond. I tell you, that diamond, I can't wait to see the look on her face.
Shop the largest selection of unique engagement rings in hand-picked diamonds. 'Tis the season to shine. Shane Company. Fine jewelry since 1929.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel you attract people who tend to be compulsive or abusive?
Do you have money problems because of someone else's drinking?
Are you afraid or embarrassed to bring your friends home?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
More than half of all adults have a family history of alcoholism.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
If you can plan barbecues and weddings, you can plan to protect yourself from a natural disaster. Sign up for local alerts, prepare an emergency kit, and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Becky Bruce. First, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Washington today urging lawmakers to support more funding to help his military fight Russia. Second, former Utah GOP Chair Derek Brown says he's running for state attorney general after the incumbent Sean Reyes decided not to run. And third, the Dow Jones just posted its third highest finish ever as investors await an interest rate decision tomorrow. Right now, it's mostly cloudy, 39 degrees in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program today, we're still standing by, waiting for a press conference with President Zelensky of Ukraine and President Biden of the United States. They've been meeting at the White House. They were actually scheduled to begin this press conference at 2:15 Utah time. They were still standing by, waiting, and if they do step to the microphones, we will join that live here on KSL News Radio to get an update. This is an important meeting for President Zelensky. He is seeking additional funding and support. Of course, the president had put forward a plan for $61 million in additional funding going to Ukraine for the war effort there against Vladimir Putin and the Russian army that has invaded Ukraine and their sovereign territory. And as we look at how that breaks down, of course, there's a lot of squabbles and a lot of things going back and forth in Washington, D.C. And to be honest, most of what I have seen today from both the Republicans and the Democrats is all fake fights and false choices. It is the epitome of what is wrong in our nation's capital, that we do not have leaders who are willing to get to the table and have the conversation, the real conversation, not the stuff for the microphones, not the stuff for social media, not the stuff so that you can do a fundraising email or something really cute on TikTok that might get you a few more followers and might help your reelection. Leadership. We do not elect people to go to our nation's capital to be politicians. We elect them to govern. And we do not elect them to govern when things are good and easy. Anybody can do that. The test is, can you do it when it's hard? And this is hard. It's supposed to be hard. The founders set it up to be hard. And somehow some of our members of Congress on both sides of the political aisle are just shocked and dismayed that this is hard work, that it's difficult, that you might have to not get 100% of what you want, that you might have to show what the integrity of compromise actually is and looks like. But that's the real test. And it's on days like this that I get the most exasperated because so few are willing to step up and say, all right, gang, we've had our fun. We've scored our political points. Everybody added some funds to their campaign coffers over the last few weeks, talking about Ukraine and Israel and immigration and the border. And now it's time to go to work. Who's going to do that? I think we had some pretty serious people on both sides of the aisle. We had Senator Langford, Republican from Oklahoma. We had Senator Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut, who were having serious conversations to take what President Biden laid on the table, which included funding for Ukraine, some funding and aid for Israel, and some funding for the border. Now, to me, you can look at that and say, okay, that's something we can get done, and you should get it done. And you may not get all of it. You may get a portion of it, and you may need to come back to a part of it. That's okay. But to just stand there and say, I can't believe it's so hard. I can't believe it's taking this long. We can't get this done before the end of the year. That is inexcusable. We have had so much shoulder shrugging and so little shoulder squaring coming out of our nation's capital. That's what concerns me. And it's days like today that matter, that we need people who are willing to lead. And so as we continue to wait and to watch to see if the President and President Zelensky will step to the microphones, we are being told it is imminent. So we've gone from soon for 30 minutes. Now we're to imminent. So if soon is 45 minutes, I'm not sure how long imminent is. But we will go to that press conference for at least a little bit of coverage as they step to the microphones to hear what the conversation was. We know what was on the table. We know what the issues are. We know why President Zelensky flew all the way to Washington. He thinks it's urgent now. And I think he's right. Because I think this is the window where Ukraine can actually win. Not just survive, not just defend, but win. And it's not about blank checks. Again, that's part of the false narrative, the fake fight and the false choice. It's not about being the world's police officer. Again, false narrative, fake fight, false choice. This is about an important ally, an important part of the world against a major enemy. And let's be really clear about what that is and what that looks like. And so if we can't get to that conversation, I mean, that's pretty easy to me. And so I think that's the important thing that we have to get to is, can we have anybody, will anybody step forward and say, okay, I'm going to step into the breach. I'm going to be the one to say, to my side, to your side, to all the sides, to everybody,